Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zobrio University's webinar on MIP calendar year-end preparation. Today we have Kathy Dwyer, a senior applications consultant here at Zobrio, to lead the webinar. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll go over all questions at the end. Thank you. I'll now hand it over to Kathy.
All righty. Thank you, Colleen, and good morning, everyone. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, holiday season, to take a little time to look at kind of a high-level view of the year-end in the MIP accounting software. I'm going to dig right in because I have a few subjects that I'd like to cover. Again, just keep in mind, this is more of a presentation, but if you folks have any questions at all, you certainly can reach out to me via email, email is probably the best bet, and we can talk about subjects further. Okay. So just a couple of things I wanted to point out here is up under organization, and we're in the fund accounting, and up under organization, I am going to go to organization preferences. Okay. And this is probably relates more specifically to those clients that might have a fiscal year that ends December 31st, so their fiscal and calendar years are consecutive, but or concurrent with one another. What happens here is on the entry dates tab, this really controls the time period that the system will allow you to post transactions into. And this is the effective or business date of those transactions in the GL. And what ends up happening is for each type of transaction that you have in your MIP system, for instance, API for AP invoices or APM for credits. But what happens is there's a horizontal line for each type of transaction, and then what you have basically is columns for prohibit prior to, warn prior to, warn after, or prohibit after. This example is just set up right now for warnings. It doesn't prevent us from posting into any particular valid calendar date, but it will come up and say, okay, wait a minute, you're putting in a transaction dated prior to 1/1/2020, and it's going to just pop up a message box and say, are you sure, basically, are you sure you want to do this? So kind of the takeaway from this screen would be your choice whether you want to use it at all, if you want to use warn dates, and it's based front end and back end dates, or if you also want to put in prohibit dates. Okay. Do keep in mind you can enter a value in a column and then use your F5 key to auto dupe that in subsequent lines. It just makes it go a little faster if you're populating these screens. But this is what, when you say, how do I open a fiscal year, it's not necessarily an open per se, but these dates are what control a user's ability to post into a particular time frame. Okay. So that's that. That's from the accounting standpoint. Okay. For those folks, let me cancel out of here. For those folks that perhaps have the MIP payroll, maybe also they have the MIP HR system. Okay. The one thing to set yourself up that is mandatory as far as starting a payroll for the month of January is here in the payroll module. I am in the setup area, so left side of the screen, payroll setup. There is this job called processing groups. The processing group, you may have one, two, or several. It's what segregates one group of employees from another, typically based on the frequency of pay. Okay. But what ends up happening here is you're not adding necessarily a new processing group. You're basically taking what's there, and I'm going to take our processing group BW for biweekly, and just indicate when you get in here, it's really the pay schedule tab. Okay, that what ends up happening is typically you're going to come in here and see an entry for each year that you've been on the payroll. But what you're going to do to get the 2021 calendar year open for payroll, is you come to the payroll schedule, you literally type in, you don't hit the drop arrow, but you type in 2021 into your year field. And then what you can do is specify your actual first pay date in the month of January. Okay. Once you do that, you'll notice that the grid starts loading up with pay dates. And then also, I'm going to just use, and again, these would be not necessarily your values. I'm just selecting dates in the month of January. And what happens is by specifying the first pay date and specifying the pay period ending date, the system then projects out and fills in the grid. You'll have any number of lines here based on your pay frequency. So biweekly, we've got the 26 lines with the extra pay period number 27. Weekly, you'd have 52 lines. But this is a mandatory step to come to the pay schedule, load in the year, and then what ends up happening is the way you answer these questions, the system jump starts the grid, fills in information. You certainly have the rights to go in and type and say, yeah, no, that's not really what I wanted. Do know if you need to do a do-over before you hit the save button. If you hit the undo button, it will clear the grid and you can try again. But keep in mind, too, not only is it your pay dates and your pay period beginning and end, if you do have state unemployment, it does project the number of weeks per month. If you don't have your SUTA deductions, just simply come in here and come on down and do the zeros, okay? Once you get all that information in, really you can go ahead and hit the save button, okay? And frankly, that's really all you need to do from a payroll standpoint to get yourself up and running. If you do have benefit or deduction changes, rate changes, if they take effect the first of your calendar year, your standalone payroll-only people, those changes, of course, will come through down the bottom here. I'm going into related tasks and the default timesheets. Okay, what you do is, in this instance where you do HR module, you select one employee at a time, and basically you go to the individual benefits and deduction tabs. The rate changes there. Okay. On the other hand, okay, if you happen to be an HR user, I'm going to come down to the tray and open up our HR module. Again, if you're using HR, you have set up benefit plans, and your rates change as of your, let's say, your first payroll in the month of January. With your benefit plans, what ends up happening is, do keep in mind you can select your benefits that are changing, okay? And again, what makes a benefit plan unique is it links your benefit and deduction codes together. But the big thing here is, again, with the HR, you can select your benefit code, and if you changes or have rate changes, you go to the rate table tab, and here we have different lines, like in this table, employee only, family, employee spouse, employee child, and you simply make the changes in one place for a benefit. Okay. Once you save those changes, okay, what you do is to push those changes out to the individual employees. You make your benefit plan changes, and then you come over to the tab that says Update Benefits. And that literally takes the rate changes that you made in your benefit plans table and pushes them all out to the individual employees. Okay. Now, let me come back a bit here and just show you something. I'm back into the fund accounting. Okay. If you come out to at the top right to the help, and you come on down to About MIP, what it basically tells you here is the very first lines there is the version number of the software that you're running. Okay. Most of us should be up on version 20.2 at this point. Okay. Well, MIP came out, or Community Brands, who of course are the publishers of the MIP software. They have a new release available. This came out this week, I believe Monday, and it's version 20.3. The good news is they're good and early for our year-end information. The bad news is we need to get this installed on your systems before you start production of your 1099s, W-2s, or 1095s. Okay? So for those clients that would like to have some assistance with that, certainly reach out to me. I will say this because I am in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts clients, I will be in touch and we'll get you scheduled so we can get that update done. Okay. Couple of things that I would like to point out that perhaps might be beneficial as you're starting to prepare is also under, at the top, organization and then organization information. Okay. Whether you're talking about creating W-2s or 1099s or 1095s, your organization information, basically, as we know, the program uses what they call Atrix, which is a fully integrated product with your MIP suite. And what it does is it generates the actual forms, and it also has the ability to really email, either email out the forms to your employees or recipients. It also has, Atrix has the ability to really upload this information to the IRS. Okay. In terms of getting set up and being ready to use this, again, fully embedded product within the software, is you want to double check that your organization name, here I happen to have this set up as City of East Providence, Rhode Island, but you want to make sure your organization name is accurate. You want to make sure that your tax ID here is accurate. On your address tab, you want to be sure that your address is good. I will say this, you want to limit your address, that upper box, to 3 lines, because that's what physically fits on an IRS 1099 and W-2 form. Okay. And then lastly in here, I just wanted to mention is something to perhaps consider this year where we're spending quite a bit of time working remotely is there is this electronic filing tab, okay? And what it does basically is it sets up some of the required information for an electronic file, okay? And certainly you folks can create that file or you can create physical forms through the MIP software, whether they're 1099s or W-2s or 1095s. The e-filing does come through the Atrix software, okay? And that does come with a cost. And the e-file, there's certain fields that are required by the IRS, and really, probably most significantly for us is really if there's a problem, how do they contact you and who is the contact person? And that is coming from this electronic filing tab. Okay. Now, the reason I brought up, the remote working remotely is certainly if you need to print your 1099s or you opt to print them in the past or you opted to print your W-2s, you might consider the full Atrix service this year, which is you're generating a file that you basically upload to the folks at Atrix, and what happens there is they will physically print the forms and either physically mail them or email them to the recipient or the employee, and then they also do all the full e-filing to the IRS and your state and local governments as far as that goes. I'm not trying to promote them, but I want you guys to necessarily know that it's out there. I believe that the cost this year is $2.04 per recipient or per employee, but it's an option for you as far as the remote, working remotely and the ability to get in there, get to your office and do the physical printing of the forms and whatnot. If you prefer to do the printing in-house, that's fine too. That's all, same functionality is available through the software as previous years. Now, moving on a little bit here is just let me point this out to you is if we come up under activities and come down to accounts payable, you'll notice there's an option here to produce vendor 1099s. Okay. I'm going to go into that job here for just a moment because I want to point out something. Is in the upper right corner of this job is this Forms Updates button. Okay. The form updates is like doing an automatic software update. You press on that, and the system's going to go out through your browser, and it's going to look to see if there's any updates to the Atrix software. Okay. There's quite a few updates that occur throughout the month of December as the software is being updated, whether, again, they're federal forms or state forms, and it impacts you. But if that button to the right, Form Updates, have focus so that you can click on it, you want to go ahead and click on that and basically tell the system to go ahead and let the software do an automatic update. Okay. That will ensure that basically you've got all the latest and greatest software and that you're ready to produce the forms. One key component to remember is after you do the forms updates and you let the software walk through and do the updates, make sure that you come back and you cancel out of the screen, okay? Then come back in, whether you're coming in through accounts payable and produce 1099s. Just be sure you exit after an update, exit, come back in, and then any form that will be updated will be available here in the drop-down. Okay. If you don't exit and come back in, it looks like you've done the update, but perhaps your form is not sitting here in the window. But exiting out and coming back in is a refresh, and it will do that for you. For any payroll users that are on the call, basically the same principles apply. If you go under activities and rather than going to AP, if you come down to payroll and you come all the way down to the second from the bottom, tax forms and e-filing, it's going to take you to basically the same Atrix grid, and you're going to have updates out to the form updates out to the right. Okay. So it's important to know, again, always keep that up to date. Let it do the automatic updates. Exit out, come on back in to see your new updated form. All righty. Now, next thing I wanted to talk to you about is a little bit of a surprise that I heard yesterday in a year-end class that myself I was taking. Well, in this past summer, when we had MIP release 20.2, what was added to the system for your 1099s were the IRS changes where Form 1099 Miscellaneous Box 07 was no longer a valid response for calendar 2020, but rather the IRS changed this to Form NEC, or Non-Employee Compensation, which is what Box 7 was, and it's an NEC and typically Box 1 on that form. Well, at the time, what happens is, and I'm going to go in under the vendor file to use this as a display, and let me double-click on our vendor ABC. Okay. Well, what the early word is in the middle of the summer is the software was updated, and we had on the 1099 information tab towards the bottom under the default form type, this NEC was added to our applicable options. And then to the right on the box number, we, as you can see, not applicable, or boxes 1, 4, 5, and 7. Okay. So what the idea was at the time was we would run certain reports to identify our miscellaneous 07 vendors. You would then come into this job and manually change them from Miss 07 or miscellaneous and Miss 07 to NEC and NEC 01. Okay. Further, what would happen is we would run a general ledger cash journal and filter it on these miscellaneous 07 vendors and we would get a calendar to date total of what had been paid to those vendors. And what we would do is then further manually come into this grid that you see down the bottom. And this is an example where you'll see $1,000 was subtracted from the miscellaneous 07 box, and $1,000 was applied to box NEC01. Okay? So the two entries obviously net to zero, but we're reclassifying the historical record, if you will, from one category to another. That was necessary because it's when a vendor is paid and the entry gets processed into history, that cash entry is then flagged, the cash disbursement entry it's at that point it's being flagged, that individual purchase is being flagged as being subject to 1099, and if so, which box. Okay. It's not good enough just to come back here and change the vendor file. You basically make the adjustments in the grid as well, and then the system looks at the history along with the adjustments in the grid, and the net of those two entries becomes what prints on the forms themselves. Okay. Now, apparently there must have been a fair amount of pushback against the folks at Community Brands, and I'm not trying to bash them here, quite frankly. They're a good partner, they're a good company. But what's happening is in Release 20.3, which again we are required to put on the system so we can produce these forms, well, what Release 20.3 is going to do automatically now is it's going to sweep down through your vendor file. It's going to locate anybody that's still coded as miscellaneous and Box 7, and it's going to automatically change them from NEC to NEC01. And that's a good thing. If we've done that manually, no big deal. The system won't find any, there won't be anything to be changed. The gotcha is this. The program is going to automatically also go down through the history, and it's going to change the miscellaneous 07 purchases to NEC01. And that, on the surface, is fine to anybody that hasn't dealt with the adjustments in this grid previously. That's a good thing. We want that to happen. Okay. The folks that took the time to come down and make the adjustments in the grid, I really feel terrible saying this, is we now need to go back and delete those adjustments. And the reason for that is if the program, again, doing it automatically, I don't have a way of saying don't do this, it's going to, by changing the history from MIS 07 to NEC 01, and then also having that, if you will, a same type of parallel entry here in the adjustment grid, is going to double up the totals. Okay. So, again, heartfelt apologies, because I really felt throughout the summer we were being very proactive, because at the time there was going to be no automatic history conversion. Along comes the history conversion, in the middle of December, and it's going to force us to undo these two entries. Okay. To do that, you can basically highlight them, click and drag and highlight, and literally hit the delete key on your keyboard, and away they go. Save your entry, and then we let the update do its thing. Again, my apologies. I know everybody had their heart in the right area as far as automating this. Please reach out to me individually if I can do something to help. Okay. Most of this information the way you find out where you're at with all this 1099 information is it's really here through your reports, your journals, and then the cash journal. Okay. In that category of report, when I hit my drop arrow, you'll see that there's various 1099 reports available to you. Okay. There should be, some folks will probably have some of these reports, like this one happens to be a default, which we know because of the pointed brackets, but a lot of you will have these reports that are already customized. keep in mind you can restrict the amount of data that you're seeing through the filter, so that not only are you going to accept basically the default of, yes, I'm a 1099 vendor, what you probably also want to do is grab this 1099 type box and filter information on one of these applicable codes to really find out where you're at, who needs to be adjusted. Okay. You can also, through the Content tab, and excuse me, bad procedure there, let me take away that filter. You also have here on the Content tab, be sure to include, I'm going to get rid of that adjustment for a second, be sure to include a field for disbursements as well as a field for 1099 adjustments. And what that will do is pull information from both. Disbursements come from the history file, the adjustments come from what we saw in the vendor file, and it helps clarify what needs to be done. Okay. However, I do want to reiterate for those folks that have made those changes throughout the summer into the fall, if you would like some assistance, please reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to help out with that. Righty. So those, more or less, those are the high overview look of year-end between your entry dates, your payroll processing groups, scheduling the update for version 20.3, your Atrix updates through the software. That's what we wanted to cover today. And again, reach out to me and we'll get things scheduled and walk through any manual adjustments that you'd like to make. Appreciate everybody attending and have a great, happy holiday season. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. A recording will be made available shortly.